Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. We are your hosts, Ken Seymour and Richard Geiger. How are you, Richard?
Doing okay. I'll go with okay.
It's been an interesting week, an interesting series of weeks, and we'll get into a little bit of that more later. But the thing that I am particularly happy about right now is we have two special guests with us today. We have our good friend, Delvin Cox from the Delvin Cox Experience. How are you, sir?
Hold on 1 second before we get into how I'm doing. Who starts off a count with just 5 and says nothing else after that? Where did that come from?
Wait, there was probably some. Had at least a 5 and then
5, 3,
yeah,
1. Yeah. Well, you've been through this. I don't want to bore you with the basics.
Yeah, good point. This is my first pony ride on this.
Everyone knows the process is 5, 4, 3, 2, and then you don't say the 1. Everybody knows that's how it goes. I've never seen a 5. I'm like, wait, did he just have a stroke? What happened?
And that is the break-in from our other special guest, Michael Lacombe. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm sorry, we haven't even covered how Delvin's doing, but I'm doing all right.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm perplexed.
Hey, I'm moving on now because he's making fun of how I count badly.
Yeah. Well, we don't know how you count.
That's the problem.
Oh, this is going to be a good episode. I can feel it. Well, we have 4 distinct, interesting minds here to just chew a little bit on the newest Marvel offering. We're doing a movie review on The Black Widow. Now, for those of you who have been with us before, you know how this goes. But if you are new to our show, we have a very specific scientific, but not really formula that we follow. We break down the film into subcategories where we talk about the cast. We talk about the director. We talk about costuming and the props. We talk about location. I don't know why I was Italian there for a minute. We talk about cinematography, plot, and writing, and give some bonus points. You can have a score up to 100 points, as low as you want it to be. We have got no imaginary numbers up to this point. We're going to try and keep it that way. But, it's kind of like a little report card for how you feel the movie is. And this is, of course, our own personal opinions. And if you have not seen the movie, now is where you get off the ride, because we are going to definitely be going into spoilers, deep into all of the minutia that makes this film tick or doesn't, depending upon perspective. You fellas ready?
Indeed.
I'm ready.
All right. So both Richard and I, it's been about a week since we have seen the film. So we've had a little time to let it ruminate. Did you guys see it when it came out on the first day?
I did, yeah.
So did I. Yeah.
Excellent. So we're all kind of in the same boat.
Yep.
We tend to kind of start in the same spot from one episode to the next. And I like that because it gives us a certain amount of familiarity, even if the counting doesn't seem to go along with it.
No, I do want to break in with a little question for everybody here. And because this was one of those, we're in a unique situation when it comes to watching movies, especially Disney movies. So I want to ask everybody, what was the method that they actually watched this movie? Did you buy it on Disney Plus, or did you go to the movie theater to watch this movie?
I will say that I watched it at home.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were going to go to Ken. Like,
No,
I know you were going to call us out like that. Yeah.
There was a pause. I was like, well, we got to go with somebody. Okay, cool. Okay. So you watched it. You paid the $30 to watch it on.
Sure. We'll say that. Yeah, sure. That's what it did.
Somebody paid the $30. That's all that matters.
Do you like, after you watched it, where you're like, man, I wish I would have gone to the theater, or was it just fine for you?
It was fine. Something that I've learned during the pandemic, and make no mistake, I've been a heavy film goer since I was a wee child, and I love going to the movies. But one thing that I've noticed is that my desire to see a film supersedes my desire to see it in theaters. And I've learned that me going to the theater was more an extension of me just wanting to see whatever that was at the first available opportunity than it was the theater experience. So now that the theater experience is not necessary and I can have the convenience of seeing something the day it comes out, but still at home, yeah, I've learned that the theater is not something that I'm necessarily going to prioritize because it comes along with I got to find a babysitter. I get it's going to cost a ton of money, and I don't necessarily need it. So I was perfectly fine watching it at home.
Okay.
What about you, Delvin?
I watched it at home, and I have a pretty good TV, so I was fine with it.
I feel like I'm the odd person out.
I will say this.
You did go to the theater. Okay. Go on,
I
Del.
will say this. I'm glad I didn't go to the theater. I'll just say that much.
All right.
Well, I know Richard. Richard enjoyed this at home as well
Yep.
because he likes the idea of being able to watch the film multiple times, which is a fantastic opportunity. I don't know if it's $30 worth of fantastic, but it definitely has its upside. But I miss the theater, and I wanted to go out, and I knew it was going to be not as crowded as it normally would be. And by going to the theater, then there's no running water behind me, no people doing stuff and making noise, and I have to pause, and it breaks the experience. Something inevitably happens every single time I watch anything to just break me out of whatever it is. So I go into the theater. Worst case scenario, somebody spills popcorn on me, and I think I can deal with that because at least that feels like movie theater stuff.
That's true, but I think everyone's experience is unique, and I definitely think soon, if there is a movie that comes out that says we're only going to do this in the theater, that I'd probably break down and go, and I don't know what that would be. I don't know when that would be or what that would be to really drive me to do that, but I think eventually we'll get more interest in doing that. But yeah, sitting at home on the couch, and if you have to pause it, like if you have to go to the bathroom, just hitting pause, I think is actually a pretty good advantage.
Agreed. Spider-Man No Way Home will probably get me out of the house.
Yeah.
So December is my target date.
Assuming no massive upticks, probably.
Right. Yeah.
I think for me it'll probably be Shang-Chi. I'm guessing.
I'm looking forward to that one.
I think
I'm fine with that one at home too.
I think that my expectations for Black Widow wasn't high in the first place. So and plus everybody in my house wanted to see the movie. And I was like, okay, if I can either pay $40, $50 to go to the movie to see it and waste gas, or just pay $30 at home and put on a 99-cent bag of popcorn and watch. So I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing.
99-cent bag of popcorn, $10 container of popcorn.
Let's make my own.
Whatever. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the actual film itself. Now, the place that we often start is with the director because they're the one that is in control of everything. For those that are not aware, the director is Kate Shortland. She has had a handful of other things. If you decide to take a look at it on IMDb, you can see some television directorial work. You see some other movies, but truthfully, nothing that I was really familiar with. Had you guys seen anything that she had done previously?
No, I did. I checked just as you did. Especially because the fact that it was a female director directing a female-led movie. I wanted to see what she had under her belt, and I don't recall being familiar with anything.
Smilf?
Yeah. That's great. I was more interested in the short Pent Up House. That seems like it would be rather humorous, so I'm curious about that one.
Don't watch it at
A
work.
long time ago.
Yeah. So, okay. How do you think, Delvin, how do you think that the director did in terms of taking the existing story, fitting it into the massive behemoth that is the MCU integrated storyline, and getting everything to gel and everyone to work on the same page? What do you think? What do you think of that?
I wasn't a fan of it. To be honest with you, I thought it was me and Mike have had this conversation before. I felt like this movie felt like a Gen 1 MCU movie. And when you're in Gen 4, Gen 5, it kind of feels outdated. Like, this is okay. Like, I felt like, I'll put it this way. Because with the right director, I felt like this could have been something I would want to see more of. This, I felt like I didn't really need this. It's cool that we got it, but it was like, oh, okay, that's good.
Okay. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, like Devin said, we've kind of discussed this a little bit already. This specific aspect, and I'm kind of on the same page that he is. I felt like she made some choices that were a little bit questionable. Not necessarily anything that I'm just like, oh, this is not going well. Nothing that made me really furrow my brow in frustration. But some things that I just kind of was like, I don't really understand why you would do this. And yeah, I think it was one of those situations where it's nothing that you look like, wow, this is an incredible job, and nothing where you go, wow, this is terrible. It's just passable, serviceable. And sometimes I kind of feel like that's the most damning thing you can say about someone's creative work is that it makes you feel nothing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the space that I'm in, particularly in that regard.
What about you, Richard? Did you have a first impression that sits where the directorial chair would be?
So part of this, I think, is kind of echoing what everyone else has said so far. I think the expectation going into this movie wasn't high. And it's not like this was, I think everybody knows that this wasn't going to be some integral part of the Marvel universe. It was almost more fan service in a sense, something that should have been done maybe long ago. And then they're like, oops, let's do it. And so they got someone to do the movie, and she did the movie her way. And you're right, the movie's fine. Part of it you can't control. If she had all the writing credits and she had all the MCU stuff that she had to work with, you can only do so much with that. But you can transform something that's average into something that's above average. And I still think it came out as something average. So I agree. She didn't do anything like bad, but nothing great.
Well, I think personally, I tend to look at this in a couple different ways. I mean, we talked about not really recognizing much in terms of what she has done up to date. So to start it off, that gives me essentially, if anything, a bit of a cringe. When there's not a lot of experience, then at best you're getting what the suits want, kind of a lot more strongly than you otherwise would. But when you look at what she has already done, it doesn't scream action film, which is really kind of what this is. So again, combining those two things into it, it made me a little nervous. Now, as far as execution goes, I didn't have too much in the way of problems. I have a different view in terms of if a film does not leave me with a lasting distaste, that's still or a lasting good thing, that's potentially bad. And I don't feel that way. So I'm perfectly happy with a McDonald's double cheeseburger. It's not going to be the best meal that I've ever had. I'm going to be potentially nauseous the next day when I think about what I've potentially ingested. But
not have mustard on
it. But ultimately, it's in a way it's kind of like comfort food, and I felt that she delivered what needed to be delivered. She didn't do anything. Well, let me rephrase that. I have a feeling that the choices she made were not the choices that caused the problems that I had with this film. Just in terms of trying to make the best with what you're given, I feel that she did a good job with that. It's not going to crack my top 10 Marvel films. It's probably in the lower half, but it was fun. Most of the problems are just in the timing of the delivery, the way that the character had been dealt with up until this point, and that's really nothing that sits directly with the right at the director spot for me. So on a scale of 1 to 20, Delvin, what would you give the director of Black Widow?
10.
10. Fantastic. What about you, Michael?
Same, 10.
10. I have a feeling that we are going to be in slightly different places, which is the best. So yeah. So what about you, Richard?
I did 15.
I think that's pretty fair. I'm more forgiving. I went with a 16 on this. I think again, it's kind of like Chopped. I'm going to give you already prepared fried chicken, and I want you to make a dessert out of this. So I was a little nicer with those particular scores. Okay, well, let's go to something that's going to be a bit of a palate cleanser. Let's do costuming and props. In order to make something like this work, when you've got a huge kind of world that has been created, things have to be a part of that world, but also iconic in their own presence in the film. How do you think that everybody did on this one, Michael?
This is one aspect of the film that I thought was done pretty well, and I think it's done pretty well traditionally in Marvel films. They kind of nail the costuming, even when they deviate from what we're accustomed to. We've seen her now on numerous occasions, so we already kind of know what she's gonna, what we're gonna see out of Scarlet. But looking at what they did with Yelena, with Red Guardian, with Taskmaster. I thought a lot of those looked good, even though Taskmaster to me was, I had a couple of issues with that, and even with the character as a whole, how it was presented how she was presented in the film. But again, the look of it was still pretty cool, though. I really liked not just Red Guardian's look, but the whole concept of like, here he is like squeezing into this old style uniform. Like, I thought that was really good. So I thought they did a pretty good job here, but this is something that these films generally do a pretty good job of.
Definitely. What about you, Delvin?
I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought that like Mike said, the Red Guardian's outfit looked great. I even liked Taskmaster's outfit for the fact that it made sense of Taskmaster's abilities. I think that's what Taskmaster does is a very hard thing to replicate and explain because of what it is. It's kind of just like, okay, Taskmaster's ability is the character, I'm talking about comics wise, can memorize any type of move or technique you have and use it against you just by looking at it for like 10 seconds.
Right.
So I think this movie did a good job of saying, okay, this suit helps this character do that. I think that was cool. I liked the aspects where they went with that. I liked how the Black Widows essentially had this formulaic uniform that made sense. And then you had also these different kind of costumes for Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, including the white outfit. Mm-hmm. They all kind of thematically fit with the movie. I liked it. So
like the white one.
Yes, I agree.
What about you, Richard? Anything strike you as awesome or lacking?
I did like the white uniform, so that was a good change of pace. I liked the Red Guardian. We're just talking about the costume and the props now, so
right.
And the Taskmaster one was honestly probably the weakest of the bunch in terms of looks. There's a whole looks, and there's a lot of other things that we'll get into later on, but really there was nothing that detracted from the movie, and a lot of those tiny little things actually made sense and looked good. Although one time, and this is maybe part of the problems with watching things at home, they were doing a little fight sequence, and I noticed that the little wristlets that they have, which are normally like gold colored, it was like zoomed in on them, and it looked like little tiny pieces of like bamboo wood, and you could totally, like, it was a really, really bad prop, but since they zoomed in on it, it emphasized how bad the prop was. I don't know if anybody else saw it. It was just,
I noticed that,
but otherwise you wouldn't have noticed any of the other things just because of how it was presented. So it was pretty solid.
Yeah, I actually liked, just like what you guys, I'm just going to echo. I like pretty much how they did everything. I really loved the Red Guardian outfit. I like the weapons were, when you're trying to do something fantastic but keep it grounded, weapons are one of the ways that happens. So the firearms and everything looked really good. The choices that they made for the Taskmaster's outfit fit the character that they put in the film, and I understand why they muted the color scheme down and changed things for the general public who would not understand the comic variant of that particular outfit. But much like Richard, we'll get into the other things about that particular character soon enough. But I liked it. They could have added just a little more color. It was, if anything, it was maybe just a little too muted. I understand that you're trying to go for stealth and practicality, and that's great. But in a film where you've got 40 women all dressed up in the same black outfit, and sometimes they switch to white, having some variation is a good thing. Give me something for me to focus on that immediately draws my attention. Just a little something. The color scheme could have been just a smidgen brighter. Maybe some highlights here or there that could have looked pretty cool. But that's just me. Otherwise, I was pretty happy with everything.
I thought it was I liked the kind of the look of it, but like I felt like it was a bit uninspired. Like it felt kind of like an amalgamation of several other characters they've already presented.
Right.
Like let's give you a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this person, and then here's Taskmaster. And I was just like, okay, here's like RoboCop Winter Soldier.
Very much. And the skull is the key for that character. That's the identifying characteristic in the costume in the comics. And I understand, again, why they muted it down, but I think they maybe muted just a little too much. They could have done a little more with that to make it, because it's supposed to be fear inspiring, a bit of a boogeyman. And that's the whole kick. And I know it's not the same character, which again, we'll get into, but that there is that. All in all, though, I got to give him a 9 out of 10 on the props. I'm pretty happy with it. What about you, Richard?
Ditto.
How about you, fellas?
Delvin?
I'll go 8 out of 10.
Excellent.
That's where I was going to go as well. 8.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. It's excellent. Excellent. All right. So on to the next category. But before we get to the next category, just to remind our listeners, it is very easy to get a hold of any one of us on social media, and we're going to tell you about how to do so right now. Don't forget, Pudding People, to catch us on all of our social media to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of pudding. Where are you most active, Richard?
Well, you could see some of my activity on our Instagram account.
Would that happen to be at Pudding Guys?
That one would, yes.
Amazing. You know what? That is also our Facebook. So you can about once a month see it.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, we'll post something on Facebook. We're probably most on Twitter at Real Pudding Guys. But of course, you can catch us on Patreon as
Pudding Guys.
That's right. Where for just $1 a day, you can support us as we bring you new interviews, new material, new stuff to make our interviews and material look better. It's just fantastic for only $1 a month. A paltry
sum. Not a lot.
No, not really.
It really isn't. That's actually $12 over the course of a year.
Right. Small change to help the Pudding Guys keep going. And we love our supporters. We look forward. Now that was educational and enlightening, but we need to know about our guests because they have some fantastic stuff that you need to keep up on social media. Like Michael, what is the best way to see what you are doing at any given time?
So the best way to see my content would be on my YouTube page. It's youtube.com/c/1mike. That's ONEMIKE. And then also on Twitter, you can find me, my personal account, at Michael_Aaron. That's AARON, not ERIN. And you can find the podcast, the One Mic Twitter page at One Mic Network.
Woohoo! And what about the always amazing Mr. Delvin Cox?
You can find the podcast on any podcast server. The Delvin Cox Experience is literally everywhere. Check it out there. Great guests, great time. You can also find me on Twitter at Delvin_Cox. There you go.
Woohoo! All right. Well, that see, that's the level of celebrity that I'm looking for. You fellas are just kind of everywhere online, and I like to bask in the glow. So let's keep with that
Please.
basking. We're gonna go and talk about the cast, who are infinitely more well known than I will ever be, and yeah, I'm good with that. I get to be a semi-anonymous. But so this will be on a score scale of 1 to 20. We have some people coming back to the film. We'll start with Richard this time. How do you think they did with the casting? The choices for some of the new individuals that are pulled into this whole affair.
Well, we'll start the highlights. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, maybe I'm right on this, but maybe the best of the bunch that we got out of everybody was David Harbour doing the Red Guardian character. I thought it was just kind of hilarious, the setup with him in prison, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of overweight, covered in tattoos, and he keeps telling the stories of how great he was. But his presentation on how he did it was great. And I'm not from Russia. I don't speak Russian. I can't tell you how good or bad the Russian accents were. They weren't necessarily distracting, save for maybe Florence Pugh. Hers was a little distracting, I would say. But like I said, for me, the highlight of the cast was probably David Harbour. Everybody else did fine. I like Ray Winstone, but he was kind of over, I don't know, just off-putting in a sense.
Yeah, he didn't work for me on this one.
I wasn't
Same.
I wasn't real big. And then you have, and this goes back, and we'll beat down on this subject quite a bit, but you have a great actress in Olga Kurylenko, and you hide her behind a mask.
No,
you don't give her
lines.
any dialogue. Come on, man. Like, there's so many other people you could put in that. If you're, my only hope is that this is just a seed they've planted, and we're going to see a lot more of her in future episodes of Marvel something or other. But that was really disappointing to me. But everybody else, honestly, they were good.
What about you, Delvin? Were you of a similar opinion?
I thought the cast was great. I thought they had a great cast. I think the problem isn't the cast. I think it's how they use the cast more or less. I think Ray Winstone, good actor. My problem wasn't him being his acting ability. My problem was the role he played. The role he played straight up sucked to me. Like, this is like, why are you like I don't think we'll get to that more, but they're saying that the movie constantly lets you know that Scarlett Johansson, the Black Widow, is an Avenger. So if you keep telling us this guy is a threat to an Avenger, like, all right, come on.
Hey man, if you smell him, you're gonna be paralyzed.
Yeah, like,
So don't fuck with this guy.
This is the same like Black Widow who took on like what we know now, took on Thanos, took on Ultron, took on so many like stellar villains with a team, but still had her very own moments to shine in the very well defend herself against these guys. Now this fat guy is like, all right, don't smell me. Like, all right, come on. Like,
I have put in safeguards.
yeah, all right.
Incredible.
What about you, Michael?
I'm kind of in the same place as the two that preceded me. I again, and Delvin's point in particular about Ray, like I'm kind of the same way. It was less about his performance and more about the character itself. So I don't really look at that as a knock against the casting. But
yeah.
And I agree with Richard about Taskmaster as well. So I would say the only thing that I don't agree with is I did enjoy David Harbour quite a bit, but Florence Pugh was the standout for me, not David Harbour. I thought Florence Pugh did a great job. I really enjoyed Yelena. I really look forward to potentially seeing Yelena in the Hawkeye series. So that was great. Scarlett was great. I even liked my man from Handmaid's Tale that played her assistant. I don't know how to say his last name, OT, whatever. But
yeah, I'll let you handle that one. I'm
good. But
Good.
but yeah, I even enjoyed him for the period of time that he was on the screen. So yeah, I think they did a pretty solid job here on the casting.
Yeah, he was kind of a sleeper. He's got a great deal of charisma, which it
does.
really
Yeah.
came through in those scenes that he was in. And to me, that's kind of the thing. You see this in the really good actors. Um, Depending upon how much room that they're given to do what they need to do and how much writing goes into the individual character can do great. Because I love David Harbour in this. I love him in most things. I mean, the most recent Hellboy was an exception, but I don't blame him for that.
That's not his
Um,
fault.
yeah, that movie was just straight up awful. But I mean, you're going to bring in Rachel Weisz and
Oh God, I forgot about her.
give
Shame
her
on me.
she's one of my favorite actresses in about anything, and she goes a little against type with the character that they give her, and I like that quite a lot. And just all in all of the supporting cast that they got to do the different parts were great. I was glad that we could get just a little bit of a crossover from the shows, in that we got that little snippet at the end of the film that let us see one of our favorite comedic actresses. I know I say there's going to be spoilers, but I don't want to go too much. But playing a character that I really want them to take the direction that I think that they're going to take it. But well, no, I'm just going to say Julie Louis-Dreyfus. give her 5 minutes and she's gold in anything. And she was just I'm really excited about the part that they have given her for this.
Yes.
So I mean, all in all, the cast is just fantastic. I really don't have any complaints about the cast, and that's why I probably gave it the highest score that I gave any of the bits and pieces in this. Although technically it kind of ties with one other category, but or two, or yeah, two.
Yeah, Cinematography cast was good as well.
Yeah. So I gave it a 16 out of 20. Richard, what did you give it?
The same.
Well, we are of a similar mind. How about our friends from over the internet? What did you guys think?
I'm gonna go higher.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go. I'll go 18.
very
Thought the
nice.
cast was great.
I'm a notoriously tough grader, so I'm just gonna say 15. And because I don't like giving like weird numbers. Like I mean, like how do I judge between a 15 and a 17? So I'm like I feel like 15 is like good, but not like wow, like what a cast. Like that's where I feel like if I'm 18, 19, 20, I'm like wow, like where they find these people, what a great collection of individuals. This one I'm just like, this was good. So
Yeah.
15 out of 20, that's like that's a good score. That's good.
I'm usually a little more concerned with the overall score. If only there were a tool that let you rate things and see all your other ratings and see what your friends rate. Anyway, so
Only if there was something like that.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. Moving on. So let's go to another little palette cleanser, another small point bit of the whole piece of artwork. We'll talk about location. We had a handful of different places that this occurred throughout the plot of the film. Do you think that the number of locations, the type of locations they went, did that work for you fellas? Fight over you each other to see who goes first.
I thought honestly it fit the movie. I thought every place they went fit the movie, and it seemed fitting. I liked it.
Yeah, I distinctly remember thinking when they first moved to the scene of the outside of that prison, that I distinctly remember thinking like, wow, this looks really cool. Like all the snow and everything like that. I thought that was a great location. I liked the look of the red room once they got there. I thought that looked really nice. So I thought they did a pretty good job here. And most of the time, location is one of those things where it's like it doesn't really, if you're doing a good job, you don't notice it as much. And
Right.
if you're doing a great job, then you do notice it a little bit. And I feel like that's one of those ones. This is one of those ones where, I did actually watching this take in without the knowledge that I was going to have to rate locations. I noted like, wow, I really like this. I really like this one. So I thought they did a particularly good job with their locations here.
Yeah. What about you, Rich?
Same thing, in the sense that everything looked like it was in place and nothing was really distracting. Very clean palette of colors, whether it was in the snow or whether it was in the sky or whether it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There was a variety of places that they did their locations, and I thought they all fit with what was presented pretty good.
Yeah, I small things jumped out at me that I really liked. The initial safe house. I liked there's just something about the design, the layout of the apartment and how it all was decorated. It really worked for me as something that felt practical, but is somewhat neglected. That just kind of put together really nicely. I was not as thrilled at the farmhouse, although I really did like the secret room with the weapons that you get to see at the one point. So, all in all, it did a great job. The aerial shots, especially. I tell you what, some of these people with the amount of CGI and everything that goes into this, combining into the natural environment of wherever it is that they shoot the films, they're getting so incredibly good at this because I'm always looking for the seam. I'm looking for that Matrix moment when they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop and the guy hits the wall and the wall buckles because it's made out of foam. I'm looking for things like that. And other than the thing that you're talking about with some of the props being zoomed in on a little too much with the environment, it was just solid. I really liked it. So since this is a palette cleanser, it doesn't need to be gone into too terribly much. I'm going to give that a straight up 9. How about you, Richard?
Did I hear a 9er in there?
Indeed.
Yes, I did too.
All right. How about you, Michael?
I'm also going to go 9.
Fantastic. And of course, the incomparable Delvin.
I can go 9. That works for me.
9's all around. We all agreed on something. Woo! I need to have like confetti and alarm sounds, and it's awesome.
You could.
I've got it in this thing, but I'm always afraid that I'm going to mistap something and it'll be embarrassing. Well, more embarrassing than I normally am. But okay, so we're almost through. We're almost through to the part where we usually pick over the carcass of the film for the most. But before we get to that nitty gritty of plot, we will have one last chance to ooh and ah over the expertise that is Marvel. We're going to talk about the cinematography. And that is, of course, talking about how they put their shots together, how well the CGI was done, the pacing of the film, all that sort of stuff. Even though some of that's technically in the directing and the writing, it kind of flows into this a little bit too. Let us start with Mr. Delvin Cox.
I thought the cinematography was fine for the most part. I don't even say good at some point. But there was something I noticed that me and Mike has also talked about.
Yeah.
This movie, well, the cinematographer of this film loves to focus on a certain portion of Scarlett Johansson, and it became very uncomfortable at certain points in this film.
No.
Like, look.
Her face. Yeah.
yeah, that's what it was.
Well, okay. So there's the question. There is the line, because there is the target audience that the creators of the film feel that there is. There's the audience that they want to have. Is this an intentional thing where they're just basically doing fan service, do you think? Or do you think that it's kind of just, well, you got the tight suit and eventually we're going to have to come around to this angle?
It has to be intentional because it was done so much in certain scenes that it didn't need to be done in. It was like, okay, this is intentional. This is not something that they're doing by happenstance because of the tight suit. No, this is actually, there are scenes where you see her butt and it's like, that didn't need to be there. And if I notice it, it is very noticeable.
What about the fight choreography? What did you think about that?
Oh, I thought it was very good. I thought it was not as good as Winter Soldier, but it was up there. It was really solid, quick, crisp. It's what a Black Widow woman is supposed to be. And I would have liked to, honestly speaking, my only problem with it is I would like to see more of the Red Guardian fight. It felt like they cut away from that way too soon. Yeah. I feel like you built that character up to be something like, he's kind of a joke character, but it would have been cool to see him get into that fighting feel spirit and just see him kick ass for a little bit. And I don't feel like the movie gave us that.
That's fair. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I have little to add to what Delvin said. I'm pretty much in tune with all of that. The what I said at the beginning, that I found it interesting that this had a female director and that she made some questionable choices. That's kind of what I was thinking of. Because when you talk about the fan service, this is a group of people by and large. You're going to have a lot of people here who are going to be looking for that. But I just found it interesting that, again, like Delvin said, there's times where you feel like you might be watching something and you go, I kind of want to see what that ass looks like. And then maybe you get it and you're like, oh, okay. But when it happens very overtly on multiple occasions to where maybe you weren't thinking about that at all, and it's presented multiple times, it does start to stand out. So and again, I'm not necessarily, it's hard for me to look at that as a something that I'm going to give a negative critique on, but it's,
you can see how others might have problems with it.
Yes.
Yes. And then also, I think that you need to strike a balance between, I guess, giving the people what they want, but then not also making it so that it's unintentionally, I believe, noticeable. Like there's certain things that I just kind of feel like they have to, if they're done well, they are less noticeable, like a soundtrack, like a score. Like a good score is like it's just perfect. It's a perfect marriage with what you're seeing, and it's not one of those things that jumps out. But like I feel, I don't know. I didn't suspect I would be comparing a score to an ass, but like I don't think that it should jump out like that. And then
people score them all the time.
and then real quick, as far as the choreography, I wanted to kind of like piggyback on something that Delvin said as well, because I compared it to Winter Soldier as well. That was kind of what I was expecting, something in that vein, and it felt kind of like a watered down version of that. And when I say watered down, I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it in the sense of like Winter Soldier did it the best that it has been done in the MCU. So like this felt like it was aspiring to be Winter Soldier, but didn't hit that mark. But that doesn't make it bad. That just means it was just not, it couldn't live up to the pinnacle of fight choreography that Winter Soldier set.
Yes.
I just realized with your comments, I'm eventually going to have to alter our scoring process just a little bit because we don't have a soundtrack section.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, we're going to have to like sketch out like 5 points from some of the other categories at least to give to some soundtracks, because one of the things that I'm just going to interject because it doesn't go anywhere else, that cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit was awful.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, really bad.
Someone else, Dev Axel, I believe, mentioned that as well. Like he did not, someone that we know mutually, did not like that either. And I noticed that too. And that's one of that's similar to what I was saying. Like when you notice it like that, that's usually a bad thing when it comes to the soundtrack.
So early, it puts you on the wrong foot going into the film. And it's just, and don't get me wrong, it needs to be kind of sad. Whatever song it is, it's got to be melancholy. But if you're going to do that song with understanding what that song means and then try and do a cover like that, it is going to fail hard every time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was confused by what I was hearing initially because I had to, my brain had to catch up to what was actually being presented to me, because when we were watching, we looked at each other and like,
why?
Huh?
Yeah.
What? So you're right. Like I just confused by that song.
Yeah.
And then side note, since we're talking about, butts and tight pants, I'm no big Jimmy Fallon,
the Invisible Man.
You guys just disappeared and it looks amazing.
Ken, your head is completely gone.
Fantastic.
Like Ken's head just like slowly
vanished. Disappeared.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been as cool if you just disappeared. But like Ken's head slowly disappeared, awesome. And that was so cool looking.
I don't know what's occurring here. I think I may have to adjust what we're using in terms of camera and or our green screen, maybe just slightly the wrong shade. So let's do this.
Yeah, but we can keep talking while we're going over
this.
That's
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so anyway, side note for the listeners and the people who are in this discussion with us, if you like Jimmy Fallon or don't, that's beside the point. Most people like Will Ferrell. He did a little sketch on Jimmy Fallon shows, and he played a song. It was Tight Pants.
Yes.
Hilarious. worth a 3 minutes, 4 minutes of your time. And then the Red Guardian conversation we were briefly having in terms of the fight choreography. There was the fight between him and Taskmaster, and then it just went to nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I was so confused as to what happened. I was like, did I blink? Did the movie, like, did we miss a scene? Like, what did I fall asleep? Like,
I bet
what
it got
happened?
cut.
So they were fighting, and he was winning a little bit, and then all of a sudden they cut to something else, and then the Taskmaster is doing. I was really confused by that. But in terms of the actual cinematography, sometimes when you have somebody like Zack Snyder, for example, and people tend to like his movies a lot for some reason. Anyway, there's just weird things that happen in those movies that are so distracting and annoying and noticeable. And in this particular movie, I don't really think that I got to that extent where I saw these weird cuts or these weird angles of things. Everything was just pretty much straightforward, and you switched between things, and the fight sequences, sometimes you have to move them really quick because the people that are doing the acting maybe aren't the most athletic or can't do the moves correctly, so you kind of have to hide it with the camera cuts. And I didn't really necessarily get much of any of that in this particular movie. So that in itself, I think, lends to an okay score in terms of cinematography.
So you guys have covered most of the things that I was thinking of, with one exception. One thing I noticed, I don't know if this was on purpose, and because it's a comic book movie, I'm always looking for little nods in any way to comic books, and usually you see that in the writing or in the characters or the design or whatever. But I noticed a lot of angles. The different camera angles they used are comic book panel camera angles.
Yes. I didn't notice that.
A lot of the worm's eye view that you get at the feet several times, and the top down we were talking about going into the prison. That wasn't more of a standard aerial from most movies. It was more like a comic book
On the
frame of
bridge.
reference. Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciated that. I did one of those things where I was in the theater and looked around to see the other people. Did anybody else seem to? No one noticed that. Okay, just me.
They were too busy looking at her butt.
But I really like that. I thought they did an excellent job. I thought they, in terms of like you said, the fights were good. Some odd choices of timing in some things. It was a little muddled in the Black Widow fight with all the other widows at the end, because there were so many of them in a small space. It became visually confusing. But there wasn't going to be much of a way around that, considering what was going to happen. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. All right, Delvin, on a score out of 20, what would you give this cinematography?
I'm torn because I don't want to give it a low score because of the butts, because I like butts. So it's like, I don't know if is it good cinematography or bad cinematography. It showed me so many gratuitous shots.
If you like it, that's what I always go with. Even if I like it for a bad reason, that's a good score for me.
I'm gonna go 16 then.
16. All right. What about you, Michael?
Based on the scale that I gave before, and I gave what I give, was it location I gave the 15 to that you guys gave 16?
Location was a 9, and
okay, so that was
casting was the 15.
Casting was the 15. Yep. I thought the casting was better than the cinematography, and I gave that a 15, so I'll go 14 here.
Makes sense to me. What about you, Richard?
With the majority of the group in 16.
Yep, I think that's where I'm going to sit, on 16. Some really good stuff, a handful of small mistakes. That puts me at a 16. All right. Now for the fun spot where we either really praise the film or just tear it to pieces in the plot and writing. This is the make or break portion for any film. So yeah, odd choice of film and an odd point in the cinematic universe with the way that they've treated the character. This is an adaptation of an existing story from the comic books. So it's one of those instances where they didn't create something new. This was already basically pre-existent. They did some alterations here and there, but it is essentially still the same story. Are you guys fans of the comics? Were you aware of the story ahead of time? Did it affect how you viewed the film? Go, Michael.
No, I was actually not aware that this was I guess an adaptation of a book storylines, but it didn't impact my perception of it at all. Even if I had known, it's a serviceable script, I guess would be the best way to put it. I had issues with some decisions that were made. I guess, from a writing perspective, like, I didn't understand like why you would think that you could have a character essentially walk across a helicopter that's being sprayed with bullets where they're piercing through both walls of the helicopter, and just have that character casually walk, pick up a gun, sit in the doorway, and and I guess the bullets just decided that they weren't going to do it. Like there's things like that. I often wonder how many people saw that and went like the dog in the fire, like, this is fine. It has to go by a lot of people before it gets to my eyes. And no one said like, this is not a good look right here. So things like that.
Worked for Arnold.
These self-imposed mistakes
with confidence.
Yeah, these self-imposed mistakes are the kinds of things that irk me a little bit, but they irk me quite a bit. Irk wouldn't even be the proper word for it. But at the end of the day, the way I felt about this can only best be described as serviceable. And like I said at the top, that's kind of I believe one of the worst things that you could say about someone's creative effort is that it did nothing spectacular, and it did nothing to make you hate it. It was just there. It was very standard fare. And I don't know if you look at that as a bad thing or as a good thing, but I look at it as a generally bad thing that I come away just like, eh.
I think that's a matter of, and we'll have to do an episode on this at some point about what is the purpose of a movie. What is its existence supposed to be? What is it effect is it supposed to have on us, on society as a whole? Is it just a pastime? Is it supposed to be a work of art? Is it supposed to be a commentary on societal structures? Whatever. Is it any of these? Is it all these? I think it really kind of depends on who you are and how you look at it. So if what you're looking for is that Vincent van Gogh, well, yeah, serviceable is not good enough. But if you're looking for an escape and it's able to make you forget for a while, then yeah, it's great.
I think that's a good thing to have a discussion on at one point, because that's how I do not consume any form of film or television without at some point, either prior or after, asking myself, what need is this filling? Like what made somebody sit down and go, I want to tell this story. And when I walk away from something wondering, well, and to be fair, it's obvious on the face of it why this movie was made. But when I walk away from something and go, I don't really understand why we needed that, another pretty big indictment. But that's unrelated to this specifically, because it's pretty obvious why we needed this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why we got it, not necessarily why we needed it, but yeah.
I see what you're saying. What about you, Delvin?
I guess we're gonna start to sound like Frank Costanza and air out my grievances with this. This was a movie that to me was mediocre in every form of facet. Like
except the cast.
Yeah, except the cast, of course. But
And the
I wasn't a fan of the plot. I felt like it went nowhere. The big plot twist that everybody went crazy over, I figured out in the first 15 minutes of the movie. I didn't like.
For a second, I didn't even know what you were talking about. Like, what plot twist?
See,
I know just
exactly. It was just so I had so many issues with this movie in terms of the way it did certain things. The fact that every 5 minutes they had to tell us that she was an Avenger. All right, we know already she's an Avenger. She's an Avenger. Then they had to tell us, well, you're not one of the main Avengers. You're not Thor or anybody like that. We know. Like, you don't have to keep telling us. It's like they were holding our hands with an audience that already knows all these things. And it kind of felt like, damn, like this movie felt like if this movie would have been a Gen 1 MCU movie, like it came out around the time of Age of Ultron or something like that. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. But coming out after Infinity War, coming out even after the Spider-Man movie, it almost feels out of place.
Oh yeah.
It is. Like you can't. I'm sorry, Delva. I just want to. It feeds into what you're saying in the moment, so I want to throw this in there and let you continue. But like, I think this movie suffers from a lack of stakes, and you can't have that and have audiences fully walk away like I felt like that was worth my time, because nothing that happens in this film matters, and nothing that happens in this film makes me feel fear for the protagonist. Like, and even then they had opportunities to even make an attempt at making me feel like Scarlet or Black Widow was in danger at some point, and they had her fall off an entire building and be okay. So like I couldn't even, they couldn't even give me that. So like, yeah, I think when you know that your character, your protagonist is gonna be okay, no matter what happens in this movie, it's a tough hill to climb. Sorry, Delvin.
No, you
nailed
it on
that point in.
You nailed it on it right on the head. I want to add to that the fact that they didn't even lead us to believe that the co-stars were going to be in any sort of form of danger. In terms of like, you see Red Guardian, he was the perfect one. He was the one, if you were to say, feel like somebody's going to be in danger, or somebody's going to lose their life in this film, he was the one to do it with. When the scene came up with him, he was fighting against Taskmaster. I'm like, oh shit, they're going to kill Red Guardian. Like, that's going to be pretty cool.
There was a chance, yeah.
And then he comes back, is like nothing happened. like they didn't even fight. What just happened? Did the fight actually happen? Or they're just like, all right, the camera's off. Let's just go do something else.
Well, and here's the thing that got me with that. I got actually a little excited at that thought for a moment. If you are comic book fans, the original Red Guardian died fairly early, and it could have been a nod to the original source material, but they didn't go that route because Heather Hudson eventually becomes, kind of or not Heather Hudson, but he gets replaced by, I went to Alpha Flight for a minute. He gets replaced by, there's actually several different people that are Red Guardian. And the original one dies fairly early. If my memory serves, it's like, oh, well, this could be potentially pretty cool, but
yeah, I just thought that it just was underwhelming. And in almost every facet of the way, like even the bad guy felt like a Gen 1 MCU villain that we didn't really care about. Like, we cared about Loki, because that was the biggest problem with the Gen 1 MCU movies, where like, yeah, besides Loki, the rest of these villains, we could do without. Like, just the stars of the heroes. And it's like, okay, yeah, I don't
know, Red Skull, kind of cool.
I was thinking about the villain thing before we, earlier today, knowing that we were going to talk about this. And, I found Taskmaster to be just kind of blah. But, I also thought I don't have as big of a hang up regarding the quality of the villains throughout the MCU, just because like you can't get Loki every time. And if you get Loki every time, then you never get Loki. So yeah, a lot of times, unless the villain actively pisses me off, like Ghost in in Ant-Man and the Wasp, like unless they actively piss me off, I don't really have too many issues with the villains. I like when people have been like hammering that nail consistently. And like I said, if everybody's Loki, then nobody's Loki. So you gotta get your Lokis in every now and then, and yeah, go from there.
How about you, Richard?
So one observation that I had, this was before the movie even came out, because the presentation of this movie was one of this, in a sense, was her family, was the Black Widow family before she, went down a different path. That I felt like when there was commercials, that's what was offhanded presented to us, right? So it was the kind of the original family getting back together. But it was back in either, I want to say either Infinity War, maybe Endgame. She clearly states and is depressed at the time that she states it. I never had a family. It was part of her character development that she was always by herself, always alone. And that makes this film, what you guys said already, just seem even more out of place based on what was already presented to us by the two big movies. So that was the one thing I was just thinking the whole time going in, like, what am I missing about this story that they're going to get to, that they're not really a family? And I guess they kind of showed that, but went away. I don't know. Anyway, I'll go to some things, since we like to talk about what we don't like, and there's a lot to not like, and the Taskmaster thing just really is annoying, so annoying. But when you first start this movie and you get the presentation of like the family, right? And it's the two daughters, and it's the mom, and everything seems kind of normal. And then dad comes home and it's like, it's time, we gotta go. I'm like, how much time? You got about an hour. Like, if you don't think about that in MCU terms, and you don't think about this as trying to present an MCU character and a movie and a plot piece, and you just think of it as this is a separate story, that sequence of, we got to get out of here, what's going on, the kids have no idea what's going on, and then they get put in this situation where the kids are just like pushed aside, and they're almost like prizes in a certain sense, because one goes here, one goes here, and then the dad's all of a sudden this crazy action star, shooting at people, riding on the wings of the plane, and you're just like, what is, like, if you're the kid, you're like, what is going on right now?
Did he ride that plane wing the whole way there?
Exactly. So like this dad is like, what, like, my whole life got just shredded in this whole scenario. And then you get put in this thing where, like, you get put here and your sister gets put here, and you're like, I'll take care of you, and you're like, but no, your sister goes here. And then it just kind of devolves as a family situation. And you're just like, if you take it completely outside of the realm of how it was presented, other than this is a movie, like that, if you put that in a completely different movie, like, and then just revolved your story around that actually would have been kind of interesting, I personally think. But then of course you're just going in all these different directions, and the fact that we already mentioned it before, that there's a person that's still running the Red Room, but the Red Room is, we thought we got rid of it, we thought we killed the person, and then she's like, did you? Just like all those weird little, like, obvious elements of the plot that are just too boring and predictable. And gosh, Taskmaster, that character, and Ken and I have talked about it before, like, we love that character, like, that's a really cool character, and they basically treated it like trash in this. And the one thing, and I wish I could kind of present it in a certain sense, in front of a now actual green screen, is every time you saw this character, what did it do? The arms were out, and it was just like, duh. And then it's like, what am I seeing here? I thought for a second, well, actually, it's going to be a robot, because of how poorly the person that was in the mask was portraying that character. And that's its own thing. But there's just so many just off-putting things about the plot, but we can't forget about some of those minor cool things that were kind of introduced early on in the movie.
Well, I think the reasoning behind the walking was not to be robotic. I thought a little bit about that. As annoying as that was, I think it was intended to try and throw people off, even though anybody with half a wit would know who the character was. But if you can get the person to not walk like a woman normally would, maybe they won't realize it's a woman. That was what I was getting from that.
They did that to Ghost too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that character is one of my favorites. And in the comics, he's snarky. I mean, not like Deadpool level of snarky, but still pretty funny. And he
Arrogant.
understands who he is. He's arrogant. He knows his place in the world. He's amoral, not someone you necessarily want to like, but you still end up liking him. There's a really great 5-part comic that came out that was obviously intended to tie to the movie, and it showcased how much fun that character is. And I really want to know, did they show the comic to the writers of the film and go, that's how it's done, not this? And it was so disappointing. And to comment on Michael's point about the stakes, we all knew there was not going to be any sort of physical stakes in this film just because of when it was taking place. There's no way for there to be physical stakes, but that's not the only stakes that you can have in a film. You can have emotional stakes. You can have long-term plot impact. You can have something that makes it worthwhile, even though you know this character is not going to die, and probably the secondary characters aren't going to die. You can get some growth where you have not given the characters much growth at that point. And you get a little bit for the Black Widow character, not a lot, which is really disappointing. I mean, you had 2 hours to have something really happen. I didn't feel any major changes occurred in that character over the entire bit of the movie. The characters were basically the same from the beginning to the end. So that was really the loss that I felt. Now, that being said, I enjoyed most elements of it in terms of how they adapted, because it's tricky. The storyline that they were trying to adapt from the comics to the MCU involved a lot of changes from point A to point B, and it was always going to be complicated. And as soon as I saw that initial reference that they did to the Red Room so many movies ago, it's like, oh, I hope they're really careful when they go there, because this is supposed to be a really strong, impactful thing. And it didn't come off that way. It was just flat. Which that's my main thing. It was an okay film. It's like watching an 80s action film. When I mentioned Arnold, it's like watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger action film. He's not going to die. Everything's going to be fine. The plot doesn't matter. He gets to blow stuff up. And that's kind of what I got out of this, which on its own isn't bad. It just feels bad when it's in the company of so many other films in the MCU that are so much better.
I will say this, and this may be the most damning critique of this movie. Watching this movie made me feel like, damn, why they didn't make that Hawkeye movie before Endgame? With Hawkeye being a Ronin. That sounded awesome. Like,
that would have been good.
Just like that whole him going through the 5 years as a Ronin, just killing Yakuza members. That sounded like an awesome movie.
Yeah, that'd have been fun.
This Black Widow movie could have been a TV show.
Oh, and they would have had time. If it was a show, they would have had plenty of time to go.
It worked a lot better.
Character, yeah. Well, with that note, we're all fairly disappointed. I'm going to start with who I think is going to give the lowest score out of everybody. I have a feeling that's going to be Michael.
Oh, really? I thought we were going Delvin here. I'm going with the same logic that I used for what was the first thing?
First thing we talked about director.
Yes, director, where I said like it was, I gave it a 10 because I'm like, I didn't see anything I hated. I didn't see anything I loved. It was serviceable / passable. And that's how I feel here. I had a couple more issues with this than I did with I've already forgot what the first thing was again.
It happens.
Directing. Yes. Jeez, man. I'm checking out, man. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what's going on with me. It's been a long day. But yeah, I'm rambling. I'm still gonna roll with a 10.
10 from Michael. And then I'm going to go over to Delvin. He's going to prove me wrong. I went to Michael first, and Delvin's going to have a lower score than 10. I'm feeling it.
Okay, what's out of what, 20?
Out of 20.
Oh, like, it better be out of 20.
I'm going to go 7.
7. Harsh.
I didn't like this movie at all.
I need to get that. I need to get those special effects in there. So I can womp womp womp. All right, so let's go up a little more for our scores. Now for me, my score, I gave it a 15 because for me, 15 out of 20 is 75%. That's still not amazing, but it's passable. Again, it's one of those films I will forget. I'll never watch this film again. It was, well, that's not true. I'm going to do a kill count on it eventually, but not for any other just enjoyment.
Not for enjoyment, not for entertainment purposes.
Right.
So sad.
So 15, pretty fair. How about you, Richard?
A dozen.
Even dozen.
Well, okay.
Easy peasy. Okay, so now's the part where we get to jack with our scores, giving any bonus points, plus or minus, for any reason. So we'll start with our guests, as is our habit. Delvin, do you have any bonus points to give or to take away?
I give a bonus point for Scarlett Johansson's butt.
Should have seen that coming. Should have seen that.
Yeah. All right. And that makes your score, it makes it right. That gives you a 69. All right. I'm sure it was
right there.
completely intentional. What about you, Michael?
I am going to take away a couple points. I'm not sure how many I want to take away. I guess I'll talk and then I'll give a number that just moves me when I'm done. I'm going to talk about how disappointed I was at the quote unquote reveal of what happened in Budapest.
That sucked.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was awful.
Yeah,
And it's a chasm between what I got and what I wanted. They built that shit up, man. They've been building up Budapest for so long, and what we got was disappointing to say the least. So I'm gonna knock off 5 points for the Budapest shit.
Okay. Yeah. Now, just so you know, Michael, it's Budapest. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry.
That gives you an odd 61.
Damn.
All right. Richard, I'm sure you have at least some points that you want to do.
Yes, I wanted to throw in a nice -1 because the Taskmaster was doo-doo.
I feel like you were more passionate about Taskmaster than I was about Budapest. You only knocked off 1 point. So I'm like, maybe should I change it? Should I change my? You made a face when I said 5, like I just took it down to 0.
I think with our bonus points, we've been strong on bonus points in the past. Yeah. 1s and 2s are pretty common. Every once in a while, we'll throw in a 3 if we really actually hate or love something. 5's pretty strong for the bonus points, but I always use it as a tool to get the score. When I add up the things, I'm like, oh man, I got 80. Well, this isn't a B. I want to get it down to a C, -2, because the windows look dirty, like whatever the reason was.
If I didn't like my score so much, I would definitely take off -5 Budapest. That was a horrible explanation for that Budapest thing. They made Budapest sound like Vietnam.
It's like, for you, it's Budapest.
Yeah. And they're we just blew up a building. Like, what? Huh?
Oh, I gotta stitch my side now.
I thought Budapest was going to be some epic, like, okay, we're trapped in a prison and we have to escape, and there's like 300 guards and they're all heavily armed, and this is the story of how we escaped Budapest.
They mentioned this during the battle for New York. Like, hey, there's
a lot of red in my ledger.
Like, no,
exactly.
Well, when they're flying in the ship to get to in Endgame, like, we're a long way away from Budapest. And they even said it in that.
Because they were.
we thought this was going to lead to some big reveal. It was just a statement of what was happening at the time.
A lot of time has passed, huh? Yeah, how about the weather? So that's 78 for Richard. All right. So for me, I've got 2 different points. I'm going to give +2 points for putting the Red Guardian in the film at all. That is a character I never thought I would have seen in any film for comic books, just because it's such a deep pull, and it's one that I always liked. And the fact that they put David Harbour in it is great. 2 points for that. and then remove one of those for the Taskmaster because, just like Richard said, it was just awful.
Yeah.
That they destroyed one of my favorite characters. They've done this a couple times now where they've just changed something, like in the Scarlet Witch, Agatha Harkness, one of my favorite characters, and they did what? Okay. Anyway, so
It was Agatha all alone.
yeah. So that puts me at an 82. So the rundown is that Michael believes that this failed, just flat out F from Michael. We've got Delvin coming in with a solid D plus.
That's actually close to where I want to be at. Yeah.
Yeah. Richard at a C plus, and I give it a B minus, which, maybe something that will change over time. If only there's a tool where when I put in a score, I might change my score later. Anyway. Well, I want to thank you fellas so much for coming on and talking about the first MCU film to come out in ages and ages that made me get excited, if not a little disappointed after the fact. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Do not forget to check out these guys' podcasts. They're a lot of fun, and I guarantee you'll feel like it's time well spent and get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But until next time, Pudding People, don't forget to check out our website where you can keep current with the ultimate comic movie database. We have added the Black Widow to the information that is there. And we will be adding in, probably by the time you hear this, well, maybe not, the movie Old, also based on a graphic novel, that will be added as well. But we will see you soon with some exciting new content.